Hi everyone, welcome back to our next installment of Living Green Sustainability. My name's Deanna and I'm an educator at the Virginia Living Museum. And this week we're going to be talking about recycling. Well, actually we're going to be talking about all three of those R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. It's 3 steps, but a lot of people always skip straight to recycling. The first step in this system is to reduce. Try to reduce the amount of consumables that you're using at home, at work, and other places as well. So look for things you can eliminate. When you're trying to start reducing your use of consumables, it's best to start small. Try to tackle 1 or 2 things at a time. Maybe go to different rooms in your house and see what you can eliminate there. And then also look for the things that you use most often. The sooner that you can eliminate those, the more impact that you're going to have. The first thing I decided to eliminate was plastic grocery bags. I go shopping every single week out of the year, so I knew that I used them really often, and they were an easy switch for me to make. Most places now offer reusable grocery bags that you can purchase, or if you have an old t-shirt laying around, you can turn it into your reusable tote like we did on our last week Living Green Sustainability video. Trying to reduce the amount of consumables that we use should always be step 1. Then we should move on to step 2, reusing. This is where you can be a little bit creative. Look at the things that you still need and have to use in your life, but you can't cut out a plastic element or a consumable element, and then see if you can repurpose that in some way. When trying to reuse your consumables, think about the different ways in which an item can be used. Its reused purpose might be very different from what it was originally used for. This is going to require us to be a little bit creative. The other thing we want to think about is if this item can be repurposed in such a way that it helps us reduce our consumption in the future. Then not only are we reducing, but we're also reusing at the same time. The last of those 3 R's is recycling. It's very important to recycle as much of the things that we use as possible when they can't be reduced out of our life and when we can't repurpose them in a different way. But it should be our last option. It does help minimize some environmental impact, but it doesn't eliminate the need for those items to be produced in the first place. It's best if we can reduce what we're using first, repurpose what we can't reduce, and then move on to recycling as our last resort. When going to recycle, always be sure to check with the people who collect your recycling to see their specific rules. Sometimes it's a private company, sometimes it's a local government, but always see what they allow and what they don't allow. Different areas have different things that they can recycle. Be sure to rinse off all of the food or residue left behind on an item before you recycle it. And then lastly, be sure to follow all of those guidelines that are set out by your local recycler. By not following these guidelines, we can actually cause major issues in the recycling system. Items that aren't supposed to be recycled can cause complete shutdowns of the machines that sort the recycling, and they can cause other recyclables that have been sent to the facility to be redirected to the landfill. If these items are tangled up with non-recyclables, they can't separate them there, so they all have to go into the landfill. As every area has different items that they can and cannot recycle, we're not going to go over all of those right now. But we are going to address a few things that are often mixed up with recycling, but they can never be recycled. Styrofoam is not recyclable. Disposable plastic utensils. Plastic-coated papers. Now this includes things like wrapping paper, store receipts, and to-go paper cups that you might get from a restaurant. Diapers, and then any greasy paper or cardboard. A lot of times this is talking about food to-go containers or pizza boxes. Now you can recycle the rest of the paper or cardboard that hasn't gotten greasy, but you're going to have to cut off that greasy part and throw that away. This week, see if you can go around your home and find one thing that you are using as a consumable that you can reduce, one thing that you can reuse in a different way in your home, and then look at what you're recycling and see if you have an item that you're either recycling incorrectly or that you've been directing into the trash that can actually be recycled. The first R I decided to tackle was recycling. I looked around my house to see if there was anything that I was recycling that I shouldn't be, or that I was throwing away that I actually could be recycling. I went to my local community's website and searched their recycling policies, and I found out that I could actually be recycling something that I was throwing into the trash. By looking online at my city's website, I found out that my area recycles these types of milk cartons, which I had been throwing into the trash. Once I learned something else that I could be putting into my recycling, I decided to move on to reducing and reusing. This week, while looking around my kitchen, I realized that I could reduce some plastic packaging from fruits and vegetables that I'm using, and then also reduce food waste. While I was cutting green onions for dinner the other night, I realized that I don't use them that often, and I don't need a whole big package. I rarely finish the whole package before they start to go bad. That leads to food waste. When I had finished chopping the onions, I put the root portion into a small cup of water and left them out on the kitchen counter to give them a head start growing. Then I found a coffee container that was in our recycling. I carefully cut it in half because I don't have a planter in my house right now and I don't want to have to go out to buy one. After the coffee container was cut in half, I put soil on one side so that I could make a little planter for my brand new baby green onions. This is a picture of the green onions after being out on the counter for 2 days to give them a growing head start. If you look at the top, you can see they've already started to grow in just the last 2 days. Then I planted my little green onions in their new planter. Not only will I no longer have to buy them in plastic packaging at the store, but I'll also be able to use only the amount I need and grow them in my own home. So I'm reducing and reusing in the same project. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's Living Green Sustainability. Be sure to send us a message or send us pictures of how you're improving your reducing, reusing, and recycling around your home.